My name is Seth Christensen. This is the Got Any Cows podcast. As Jonathan Larue says, I may not know anything about anything else, but I do know a lot about cows.
You know cows.
So back in the day, once upon a time, we had an intern. And this intern said, "Hey, I
know where this is going now.
I need to, ask John. I need to interview somebody for school, for being a rancher, for potentially like learning about being a rancher. I need to interview somebody." And John said, "Well, you could probably, talk to Seth." And she said, "No, I need to talk to a real rancher." So ever since then, we've always said, that John is the certified real rancher,
Yeah.
and I'm just the certified fake rancher, And so I brought the expert here today.
Oh boy.
To discuss all things grazing and calving, and this is podcast 2, so we are definitely still kind of figuring out what all we're doing here, but John and I have always been really good at being able to yak for an extended period of time without too much of a script, so I think we'll be fine. But I guess if you're to put yourself in the shoes, John, of somebody that maybe is just getting into cattle for the first time, or just starting to figure out some grazing and or some calving, I guess what would you say to somebody that says, "Hey, I've just got cows, I'm just going to start grazing for the first time"? What would be some immediate things that come to mind, like, "Hey, do this, don't do that, here's some options"? What would you do if that person calls and said, "Hey, I need to talk to a real rancher. How do I go about grazing these cows?"
Oh boy, that's a loaded question. I think one of the biggest keys that I've learned is you got to have some flexibility. Flexibility in your plans, because things don't always go according to plan. Every pasture is different every single year, so the grass may be great one year and it may not be very good the next year. So having flexibility, having backup plans, like, well, if I expect this pasture to hold them for 90 days, but if it doesn't, then what? And see if you can get some plans made ahead of time. The most important thing to us, I think, is that we don't overgraze anything. If you overgraze, it's hard on the cows, it's hard on the ground, it's hard on the grass. I think you can make a piece more productive by grazing it less. If you're, there's a lot of guys, we see it all the time out here. We're in Idaho, there's a lot of guys that overgraze stuff hard, and they graze it to the dirt where it will look like a golf course or less, what looks like a dirt bike track. Like, it's not good. And then you see their cows and they're as skinny as your deck railing here, they're rough. You see all their bones, the hips. So we found, rotational grazing is awesome. Rotating them quicker. And don't let them eat every little centimeter of grass left. Pull them off before it gets down too far. It's better for everything. And if they're hungry, they're going to fight the fences more. Keep them full. If they're full, they're happy. We rotationally graze with a lot of temp fence. We have some permanent fence in places. We have all sorts of different fences. If it's a temp fence, it needs to be hot. Keep it hot. Make sure your ground's good, make sure your wire's good, make sure birds and animals can't pull it off. Make sure it's hopefully somewhere where people can't mess with it. We've had all these problems over the years. But if you keep your fence hot, cows stay in pretty good. If your cows are hungry, they're going to get out no matter what kind of fence you got around them. So if you graze them faster, the cows are happier. And you're happier because you're not chasing cows and you're not fixing fence all the time and you're not making all your neighbors mad at you and that sort of thing. So that's my number one obvious thing, is do not overgraze.
Yeah, 100%. One of the most common questions I get, people will call in and they don't realize they're talking to the certified fake rancher.
Yeah.
They'd rather be.
They don't know
to the
anything.
Rancher, but they'll ask me, say, "So how many acres to a cow?" Is a really common question that I get, and I always tell them it depends. But it depends on what. If somebody calls and asks the certified real rancher, "Hey, how many acres do I need to run X number of cows?" or "How many cows can I run on the acres I've got?" What do you even tell somebody if they ask you that?
I try not to answer that, because it's impossible to know. If you don't know what your grass is going to do. We keep really good detailed records of every pasture we graze all year. And every pasture can be 1,000 grazing days different from year to year, if it has any size to it. And even the small ones, they vary from year to year. If you have one that's consistent and irrigated and you know what it's going to do, then keep track of it and go with that, and that's where where that flexibility comes in. You got to have some flexibility so that you're not overgrazing, because you're like, oh, I only got one pasture, we're going to turn the cows out and they're going to stay there till November no matter what. That's hard on everything. Like, that's a big no-no. So that's probably one thing that we've had to learn here, is to be flexible and remake our plans and change stuff up and find new pastures, talk to more people to get pastures lined up. And when we started, any patch of grass we could find, we would be calling the landowner, figuring out who owns it, how do we fence it, how do we get water to it, figure out the business side of things, the deals, how to pay people, and get your cows on grass. It's a lot, I think it's a lot cheaper to have more pastures and rotate your cows faster on more ground than it is to starve them on one little piece. So it's kind of a guessing game. I feel even with me, like, we've done it years and years now, and you kind of got to guess on the year, and then it depends. Out here, we're very dependent on the rain. A very wet year, we don't have to hardly rotate our cows around because it rains and the grass grows, and the grass can keep up with a lot of cows some years. And other years, if it's dry, it's like, man, we got to move cows fast, and it's hard to keep up with grass when it's not growing. So that's what I mean by flexibility, is have backup plans, have options in your back pocket that you can take those cows to if your pasture doesn't hold what you hope it will or what you think it will. As far as how many acres per cow, we're right here in southeast Idaho, and we're probably on 10 different pastures right now. And there's not a single one of them that would hold the same amount of cows as every other pasture we have. They're all so different. There's not a good, and we're talking to people across the country, ground in Texas, obviously is going to be different ground in Idaho. And ground in Idaho is different than Utah and California and Oregon and anywhere else cows go. So I really try hard not to answer that question, because it's just impossible. Right. And if you tell someone wrong, or if you tell a landowner, oh yeah, we're going to put 50 cows on here and they'll be here for 6 months and we'll pay you this much. Well, when the grass runs out in 3 months, then what do you do? Like, did you make the deal already? We always try to pay per head per day, because then that's more fair for us. It's more fair for the landowner. We're getting our value out of the feed and the number of days our cattle are there. And then if the grass runs out early, we're not losing a ton of money on it. And then it also encourages the landowner to, like, oh, let's improve the land. Let's make it more productive. Let's not overgraze it, because if you overgraze it, it's not going to grow much the next year and it's going to get worse and worse. So those are things we've implemented here to try and improve the pastures that we graze, improve our cattle in the shape and condition that they're in by not overgrazing. Like, that's the number one thing, again, is don't overgraze.
So if somebody ends up, they're going to grab some cows, they're getting that first bunch of cows, and they're trying to decide, how many cows do I get versus how many acres do I have? And if you had to decide between having way too many cows and not nearly enough grass, or way too much grass and not nearly enough cows, which one do you want?
Way too much grass every time. You can cut it, you can bell it, feed it through the winter, whatever you want to do. You do not want to have more cows than you have grass for, because then you're in a pickle, and then you're stressed, and then you're making bad decisions on how do I feed these cows. They are out of feed. I got, if you don't have the cash, you're taking out a loan to feed your cows, or we've been in the situation where we haven't had the feed for a number of cows we were running. And it's stressful. You don't want to be in that stressful situation. And some guys, like, if you got too many cows and no money to feed them and nowhere to go with them, then you got to sell cows. And, and you're going to take a hit on that. You're going to take a loss. So, the safe play is to test the grass first. See how many it can hold. Like, build it slower and you'll lose way less money and you make more money. And then the cows that are grazing that, if there's way more feed there, your cows are going to look awesome. And they're going to breed back good. They're going to raise good calves. Your calves are going to do great. For sure, have more grass than what the cows can eat, like, every time, without 100%. A doubt.
100%. And I would say too, one of the things that we get now, people see that ground that's been well managed and that's now more productive, and people see these cows that are fat, not skinny. We have people calling us saying, hey, we want you to graze our properties, and I think that comes down to good sound management. So again, going to the scenario of somebody that maybe is getting that first set of cows or is kind of building out that herd, which a lot of our clients are. If they're in a scenario where, hey, maybe they only own just a few acres and they've kind of got a home base and that's it, I think a lot of people have it in their heads they need to own every acre that they're going to run on, and that, they got to buy the dirt. What would you say to somebody that figures they got to buy all the dirt to be able to graze any cows on it?
It's hard to have that conversation with some people, because I know a lot of people that are in that boat and they don't want to lease land, they don't want to rent land, they want to control and have the control for that, and that's fine. Like if that's what we want to do, you want to own all land, that's fine. If you have the money to buy more land, then buy more land. If you don't have the money to go and just buy a bunch of land and have more cows and have all that control, then you have to figure out a way to feed them. So you got to lease ground. We found that leasing has worked really good for us, but that's part of that flexibility of, and it's not always perfect. You can lease land and it can fall apart on you for whatever reason. We've had ground that we've leased and the owner died, and then it gets sold on you, and that sucks. But if with some flexibility you can find another piece, if you have it's a lot cheaper that way too. Instead of tying up all your capital and buying all this dirt and building all the fence and the facilities and everything that goes with that and owning it and paying taxes on it and all that stuff, like for us it's way cheaper to lease land and to put up some fence and to graze the cows that way. That works way better for us. And if you're wanting to get more cows faster, that's the way to do it, is find some pasture to lease. Like pasture does not cost very much. Your cows can make more money on lease pasture than owned pasture.
Yep. So if there's a piece, one of the things that we've run into is that quite often any piece that already has fence and water already has cows and a long-term lease on it. So if the only grass you can find has either no fence and or no water, what do you do in those settings?
So what we do is we throw up that temp fence. That electric hot fence goes up really quick, really easy. Right now with our system, me and one other person we can get 160 acres fenced on a pivot in a matter of couple hours. We have the whole pivot fence, and that'll hold in most all of our cows, hold in our bulls, and that's just a single strand. But you got to get it hot, got to keep it hot, got to have good chargers on it. But if that fence is hot, it holds our cows really well. And it's cheap. It doesn't cost a lot. It doesn't take a lot of time. You got to buy the post, you got to buy the wire, you got to buy the charger. You're into it. A couple $1,000 probably by the time you buy all the posts, all the wire, your charger. It's not that expensive to go and buy that much fence. And you can pick up a lot of feed. 160 acres, that's a lot. If it doesn't have water on it, we find ways to either pump water. If there's a canal running by, we can pump water out of the canal. What we do most of the time is just haul water. If we have to haul water, then we have some troughs that we can go, mobile troughs, go set them up. Got a water truck and a tank, just go haul the water, dump it off there, which I don't love. We tried to avoid a lot of those pastures because hauling water, that's a chore you got to do a lot of times every day. In the summertime, it's 100 degrees outside. Cows have got to have good, fresh, clean water. And so I hate doing it. I think everybody hates hauling water. But if that's what you got to do to feed your cows, then that's what you got to do to feed your cows, and I think a lot of people get that, but we're blessed to have a lot of time to do that. We do this full time, year round. A lot of other guys aren't in that position to take up that much time. So, if you can, at least find a place that has water on it. If you can find a place with water and no fence, then you're usually not competing with other people that have cows, because most people aren't willing to go put up a temp fence and do it. So if you're willing to put in a little bit of extra effort, if a few extra hours to go and buy the materials, a couple hours to put a fence up, it's not that bad. Like the fence goes in easy. There's step-in posts. It's work, but you're not building a 5 or 6 strand barbed wire fence with posts every 8 feet around the whole thing just to keep cows in on someone else's ground that they own and that you could lose at any time. But it's cheap. It's a great way to feed our cows. That's the majority of the pastures we graze on is ground that's not fenced. We've gotten to where a lot of it has water now, but we still have to haul water once in a while to get to these pastures that have a lot of good feed on them. And we've been doing business with people year over year, and they've been impressed with the way we're able to get cows on these pieces that don't have fence on them. And it helps them out a lot just to have it grazed down. And we've seen a lot of success with not overgrazing it. And if you overgraze with that electric wire, they're going to get out on you for sure every time. But if they keep full, and your fence stays hot, they stay in really well. And that ground will improve year over year and produce more and more year over year, and it looks better and better. And then your landowners are just like you're saying, they're calling us, wanting us, hey, that looked really good. I'm really impressed with you did that. Let's have you go do this piece over here. Can you graze this crop, or whatever that way. So
yeah. If somebody's going to put up one of those temp fences, what do you recommend for a charger? For what kind of post? What kind of wire? Is there a difference, or is it all the same?
There's definitely a difference. We've gone to the SpeedRite wire. We really like those. Posts, everyone kind of has different preferences on posts. We use, I think they're called Sunrise. They're step-in posts. They have 4 clips on them, so you can put more wires up if you need to. We usually don't need to do more than 2 wires on a fence. So usually 2 wires will hold in most of our cows, calves, bulls, whatever you want. 2 wires is usually good enough. So any post that can go in pretty quick and easy. If you got posts that you got to hammer in every time, if your ground's really hard or the posts aren't very good or they're designed to be hammered in instead of just stepped in, that takes a lot more time and effort because you're out there pounding every single post in, and that's a pain. But do something that's affordable. Do something that's cheap that you can afford that'll work for you. I think there's a lot of different post options out there, but you want to find one that works good for you. Ours, we feel pretty good about ours. They do a good job, and we have thousands of them because we graze so many acres all the time. But yeah, they work good. Like, it's a good, efficient system that not a lot of people take advantage of it. Out here, that's why it's easy for us to find grass, is because we're willing to go and fence pastures that we're not competing for. We live in cattle country. There's beef cows all around, but everyone's used to permanent barbed wire fence. And if you have it, that's great. Like, that's a hard fence to beat. But if you don't have it and you need a cheap option to get cows out on grass somewhere, then that's for sure the way to go. Like, that wire works good. We've used a lot of the Speed Right chargers. They've done really well for us. We've really kind of gone to more of the solar panel type now. And if you get a big solar panel charger on those do really well. They keep the fence really hot. If you have the access and options for electricity, it's great to do an extension cord and plug into someone's house or whatever you can get power. I mean, that's a great option too. But the solar chargers, they go anywhere your cows go, and as long as the sun shines once every 2 or 3 days, like, you should be pretty good. So solar chargers work great. The Speed Right wire, I think, has been the best. It's got copper in it, so it keeps the charge going. It seems like those stay the hottest. You need to make sure you have a good ground, get a good grounding rod. A lot of times we can find a fence post or a T-post or something somewhere. Power poles work awesome. They got good grounds into them. I've connected a lot of chargers to telephone poles with the ground wire going down the middle because it's hard to beat that type of ground. So really, there's tons of options for grounding. There's a lot of options out there for chargers. We've done some of the cheaper ones, and they don't last very long or they don't get as hot. So I think that's kind of what you're looking for there.
Yeah. What do you like for a fence tester?
We use the Speed Right fence testers. They've done good. It'll tell you where, if you have a fault in your line somewhere, it gives you an arrow, tells you which direction to go to look for your fault, tells you how hot it is, and you need to check your fences and know how hot they are. If they're not hot, cows are going to get out. If they're hot, cows stay in. Like, ta-da, surprise. It's pretty crazy. If you get your fence up there and you don't check it, a lot of times when you build that fence, if you start in one spot, build the fence all the way around, before you connect it and make a circle, if you get the charger on this side, test it on this side before it's connected, then it's hot all the way around. But if it's all connected and you test it one spot, it can be dead in the middle of there because you could have 2 breaks in the wire. Even though the wire's all together, if that metal wire through there isn't connected, you can have dead spots in the middle of your fence, or just 100 yards down and the whole rest of your fence is dead. You test it in one spot, but it's not going to be good all the way around. So we try to always disconnect it and test the whole circle to make sure it's getting all the way around.
Yep. What do you see as far as most common problems if someone does start using temp fence? What are the most common problems that they'll run into, or most common issues?
Your post not being in good enough. So if you get wind or snow, rain, there's all sorts of weather, or just if you're going in a corner, this is the thing that it's hardest to train our employees on, is if you got a corner of your fence and you put that post in straight, the weight of that fence over time is going to pull that post in, and that post is going to lean over and it's going to come out of the ground or fall down or get really low. So your corner posts, you need to lean out a little bit. So when that fence pulls on them, it straightens them up and keeps them tight in the ground. Other problems are going to be loose wire, so you need to make sure that wire's tight. So we use a lot of fiberglass posts, and when we clip that wire in, we'll pull that post a little bit towards the wire, clip it in, wrap it around once, and then that post wants to stand up, so it's pulling that wire tight all the time. So if you're just going around, your posts are already in the ground, you're just clipping it in, that wire is going to sag on you and get really low. And out here, we get snow, November, December, you get snow on that wire, and it's going to sag really low, and cows are just going to step over it. So it takes, there's some kinks you got to work out, some tricks you got to figure out to it. But once you keep your wire tight, your posts on the ground good, if you have a good grounding rod, a good charger, you're good to go. Like, it's going to keep your cows in.
Yeah.
So, and we get cows from everybody all over the place out here. Cows that go out, out on the range, out on the mountains, cows from the desert. They all stay in our wire once they're here used to it, as long as the wire's hot. So.
Yep. What do you run into as far as wildlife or things like that? Have you had any issues that way?
Yeah, for sure. So Idaho, it has deer and elk and whatever. So the deer, everywhere we graze has deer. There's deer at the ranch. There's one right here in the meadow below us that we can see right now. Yeah. The deer can be hard on the fence. They will learn to duck it though. They'll either duck it or they'll jump it. Once they learn it's there, they will avoid it. But it takes 4 or 5, sometimes 6, 7 days for the deer to learn that the fence is there. And if it's hot, they'll learn it. I mean, one across the valley over here, I counted 73 deer one night, all come up to our fence, and every one of them ducked it and went under our fence. But they were out the first 3 or 4 days because the deer, if they're running through it, the deer aren't going to see it, and they're going to hit the fence, and they're going to break it open, and they're going to go through it. So for the first week or so, you got to kind of watch and go around your perimeter fence every morning and night if you got a lot of deer or a lot of elk around, and check that perimeter and make sure that your fence is up. And the great thing about the fence, if it's broke somewhere, you got to break somewhere, it's really easy to fix. You go and tie it back together, you're good to go again. Obviously, you want to shut your charger off first, or else you get zapped. So, and those chargers, if they're working right, they can really hit you. And you don't want to be hit by those chargers when they're hot. So always turn your charger off before you work on it. But the deer will get used to it. The elk we don't have to deal with as much, but when we do deal with them, they come down in a herd, and when the herd's just running through, they just run through the fence. So it's probably not ideal for an area where you're dealing with elk all the time, because I don't know if the elk will really learn and respect it or not. We don't have a ton we only have about 1 or 2 pastures we've had to deal with elk. I think that they'd learn it because we've had them there for a while. But I think if they're in a big group and they're just cruising along or getting shot at, like, they run through the fence. So that's not a perfect fence for every situation and every place everywhere. You do gotta be mindful of where it's going in at. So
yeah. So 2 different topics that I'd mentioned to you prior to starting to record that we want to touch on today would be both grazing and calving, and to touch on both of them kind of together. When it comes to calving, what has your experience been with calving on temp fence? What's your experience?
Oh, it's been mixed. So we've had trials with that, right? Because you get a baby calf, and trying to figure out where it's at in the world, right? We're trying to figure out how to see, how to walk, and they're going to stumble through about wherever, and that. It almost doesn't matter what type of fence you had. We've had cows here in the barbed wire fence, and they will wander and fall and flop through the barbed wire fence. We've had them on, high tensile fence, and same thing. They'll go through any fence, and they'll get zapped, and they don't know what's going on, and they'll go through it. The temp fence can be real hard because they'll, a lot of times they'll just duck the fence and go through it. And if you're out, we've calved out on big pastures. You get big tall grass. Those cows will go outside the fence, and they'll lay down, and they'll get lost, and you can't find them. You'll spend days looking for them, and you can't find them because baby calves are magicians and can disappear. And the cows will stay in the fence, and they will not go to their calf because they're too scared of getting zapped by the fence. So it can be hazardous for sure because the cows can't get to them. Calving is hard in any type of fence, but the more solid fence you have, the better off you'll be. Like, I would not recommend calving in a single strand hot wire fence if you can avoid it. So once those calves get some age on them, then and you get a second wire down lower, the calves will stay in a lot better. But seems like they need to be about a week old before they'll respect and stay in the hot wire fence. So once they hit that week mark, they do a lot better. They stay in a lot better. But those first 3 to 5 days is really hard to keep calves in and on their moms.
September 10th.
Yeah,
Something is going on September 10th.
Yeah, September 10th. September 10th is going on September 10th.
Do you have an anniversary? Is it your anniversary?
No.
Is it?
Mine was already.
Is it my anniversary?
Yeah.
No. Your kid's got a birthday on September 10th.
No, I don't have that many kids yet.
September 10th. September 10th. Are you hunting on September 10th?
We're not hunting on September 10th. We're calving September 10th.
No, it's not that. It's
September 10th.
It's,
September
the auction. The auction. September 10th. The
auction.
September 10th is the auction.
Yeah,
the auction closes September 10th.
It closes September 10th. How do I get on the auction?
Yeah, gotanycows.com is where it's going to be at.
Okay.
Um,
what are you selling on it? I don't
yeah,
want to
we've
sell
got-
all of our good stuff.
Oh, dude, it's got the best
Don't
stuff.
sell all of our best stuff.
Katie Maru preg, a heifer preg off the Katie Maru cow, original import out of Japan, all the bells, all the whistles. A homozygous polled bull is going to be on there. The Star Lord bull.
You're
we're
selling
gonna do the initial
Star-Lord?
release.
Oh.
Well, just the semen on it.
Oh, good.
The initial release on him. Yep.
Thank
but it
goodness.
closes September 10th, so like no more
Closes
bids
September
after
10th.
that.
What if I mean, I don't know if I can, maybe I will go hunting September 10th. Can I
No.
bid September 11th?
Absolutely not. Like, no. September 10th is when the auction closes.
But I thought we were friends.
September 10th is when it closes.
September 10th.
September 10th.
September 10th. All right.
So when it comes time for calving, and again, kind of putting yourself in the shoes of maybe somebody that's not been through a calving season yet, we've gone and made a set of embryo transfer pregnancies for them. They've got some really neat, exciting calves on the way, but they've not done it before. What is the earliest prior to a due date that they ought to be watching, and or how far past the due date do you think they ought to be watching for a calf before they worry about there being a problem?
Yeah, that's a loaded question, because if I'm the guy that tells you, too early, you're going to cuss me because you're going to go check that calf for 3 weeks, waiting for that calf to come, and it's not going to come for 2 more weeks,
Yeah.
So, I mean, here I think we've experienced about 21 days early and 21 days late on the same flush of embryos. So about 3 weeks before and after, they could potentially come. And it's interesting, different calves can come at different times. We found, different breeds go at different times. But that being said, like, they could come up to 3 weeks early, up to 3 weeks over, and any time in between. Usually in the middle of the night while you're trying to sleep after you've had a long day at work, and all you want to do is get a little bit of shut eye, and then you got problems or something you need to be out there for. So calving's hard. It's a hard thing to go through, so especially your first time, because you're excited, you're nervous, you're anxious, you're not quite sure what to look for, you're seeing the bag come, you're seeing some signs that you think the cow is getting close, and then you see these signs for 2 weeks and the calf doesn't come. And that that can be frustrating and exciting. And when calving goes right, it's the coolest thing ever. That calf comes out and mom licks it off, calf stands up and starts sucking right away. You're like, oh, this is great, and then your wife and your kids can come out and see the calf, like, oh, that thing is so cute, it's so little, and they love it, and it's awesome. But man, it can go bad in a hurry too, so you really got to watch them close.
Yeah, for sure. And we had the 1 year, it would have been 2021, that we had off the exact same embryo transfer date, a full 21 days early on an Angus calf, and it ended up being 19 days late on the Akiushi calf, so right about 3 weeks either direction. Exact same transfer date. We do generally see those Angus calves come early. We do generally see the Akiushi calves go a little late or go a little over. And I guess this would be one point that I would throw in as well, if anybody is looking at that window, either side. If a calf's born a full 3 weeks early or a full 3 weeks late, that's also the length of the average length of a cow's estrus cycle. So it is possible that was, if it's 3 weeks early, you could have a calf that's from a different service than you thought it was. If it's 3 weeks late, it could be from a different service than you thought it was. What are the things you watch for? Like, I guess we try to bring the cattle in plenty early enough, there's somewhere that we can watch them close and things like that. But what are the things you watch for to indicate, hey, this cow is getting closer? If you got somebody, this is calving season number 1, and they're saying, okay, well, I know the baby's gonna come, but like, what am I watching for to know that calf's getting closer, or that the cow is getting closer to calving? What are the early signs all the way up till it's go time?
Yeah, I mean, obviously they start bagging up, especially if it's a heifer. You start seeing that bag under there. A lot of times when it's really getting close to go time, the cows will act different. Like you can kind of see, they get antsier. They'll stand up, they'll lay down, they'll go off by themselves. It kind of depends on where they're at too. If you're in a tight pen, it's a little harder to notice that. If you're out in a big field, a big meadow, if a cow's getting close to calving, she's usually going to go and trying to find a spot where she has some privacy and can be alone for a little bit and have that calf in a safe place. So, I mean, that's one of the first things I look at when I go to a pasture and look for cows calving. Which cow is not with the group? Which cow is not like the rest of them? And then she's either about to have a calf or she's already had a calf. So I always look for that. You can look at the back ends. You start getting some fluid out. Things start stretching a little bit. You see that udder getting really full. Sometimes you'll even see milk shooting out a little bit. That udder can get tight and then get their milk in a little bit early. So all those things can give you signs. Some of those things can be misleading though. Sometimes cows will go and act weird a day or 2 or 3 or 4 and just want to be by themselves anyways. But most of the time when they go off by themselves, that's a pretty good indicator for me that they're getting really close. They're going to go within, I'd say usually 12 hours. When they're out by themselves, you're usually within a 12-hour time frame. When you're starting to see fluid, mucus come out, you're usually getting pretty close. Usually, I think that's within a 12, 24-hour type of window most of the time. But it's kind of a different looking fluid, before you get all that. If you're starting to see, the placenta, the sac come out, that's, you're there. Like, she's calving. If you're starting to see some bubbles come out, you see that placenta. If it's really dark colored, it's probably been out for a while and you need to get rolling on checking things. If it's still clear and kind of cleaner looking, I feel like that's a time where it's like, okay, let's watch her close. Let's give her an hour or half an hour and see if there's any progress. See what the cow's doing. Is she pushing? Is she trying? Is there feet there? If you see feet, like, you really got to go. That there's a calf right there. It's coming. And then you're trying to see. You don't want to disturb the cow too much when she's calving. You don't want to push her away. You don't want to get her worked up. You don't want to run her around if you can help it, until you have to. If you have to. But most of the time, especially on cows, they can get the job done on their own. But if you see feet, like, try to look at what direction are they. Does it look like the feet are pointed the right way? You got 2 feet there.
What way is the right way?
That's a good question. So sometimes I don't know. It can look real confusing, right? Like, you get, sometimes those feet can get twisted in there, and it's hard to tell the difference between front feet and back feet a lot of the times, especially when all you're seeing is toes and there's a whole sac there, placenta, and you got blood and mucus and cow crap coming out the rear end, and it can be a nightmare trying to figure that out. And you're not going to know that from a distance a lot of times until you get the cow in a chute and if you have to pull it. But our rule of thumb is once you see that sac coming out of the cow and hanging out, you give her an hour. If she hasn't got out in an hour, at least made good progress, you get her in the chute and you pull that calf. We've waited too long many times. It's never good to wait too long. So if you can get it in, get it out quicker, it's going to be better for the cow and better for the calf, better for you, because you're not watching her for 3 hours hoping she's going to get it out on her own, and then you end up trying to pull it anyways, and you end up with a dead calf, and you're just madder than a hornet, and that never goes good. So you watch for that sac. That's really your thing. Once you start seeing a sac, the calf's coming, or you're going to have to pull a calf. Mm-hmm. So you got that's action time. That's go time. But you don't want to rush it just because there's a sac there. If when that sac comes out, you give it at least half an hour. At least. But over an hour, there's that window there where if it's not an hour, then go help it. So do you have anything else you'd like to add to that? Like, no, you've seen as many as me or more?
Yeah, I think it's spot on that you do want to watch, just like you mentioned, for that amniotic sac to come out, and if the amniotic fluid is dirty, just like you mentioned, that generally is a sign of a distressed calf, and you probably want to go right to working on that cow right away, helping her. Whereas if it's clean, I don't know if that's even but clear.
Kind of clear. It's not dark dirty,
and kind of a lighter. More clear, I guess. Yeah, more clear, more clean. If it looks that way, then I'm good to give them 30 to 60 minutes. If it's dirty, you go to work on them right away. And I think it's the perpetual question. Whenever we go to calf cows, is we never want to help one that doesn't need it. We want to make sure we give her enough time to have a shot, because as soon as you start monkeying with them, they're not going to work on it at all. But so you want to give them enough time to work, but then always cuss yourself if you get a dead calf out because you gave it too much time, or didn't get after it early enough. And so I generally set a timer on my phone, and if I've got any question at all, as far as if it's already been out for a little bit, I'll go 30 minutes. And if it's one that I think, this is it's clean, it's clear, it's clearly just barely come out, I'll give her a full 60 to work. And most of the time, it's out, and she's fine, and she's got it, and everything is good. But if you've seen a sac of any kind out of the back end of a cow, anything hanging out of the back end of a cow, and it's gone 60 minutes, and there's not either significant progress or a calf is out, it's time to go. And I generally err on the side of, I have been way mad that I didn't call a vet early enough before. I have not been terribly mad if it's like, well, I called the vet and I probably didn't need him. I'd a lot rather be mad about that than be like, boy, I waited too long. I should have called early. So if I have to pull one, quite often I do call the vet right then. Even though we've pulled a lot and most of the time we get them out on our own, And quite often we'll get that calf out and I'll call back and say, hey, yeah, we're good. We don't need the vet, But that way, if we do need a vet and we're not getting it figured out or turned around or whatever, we get the vet here in time to help and to get that calf out alive. Like you're talking about with the feet, they can be misleading. Hopefully we've got hooves pointed down. We've got hooves pointed at the ground. And that's generally going to be indicative of front feet. Not always. We have had problems before where we have misidentified front versus rear, and you should assist those births differently. And so you want to be certain of what you're working with if you do go to pulling. But generally speaking, if the hooves are pointed down, you're in pretty good shape. If the hooves are pointed up towards the tailbone or towards the sky, you're in more of a pickle with that calf, generally speaking. So we've talked about what to look for, when to call a vet. So if we go to pull a calf, which you and I have done several times.
Mostly together, thank goodness.
Yeah. If you go to pull a calf, and what's your process there for pulling a calf?
Well, I like to glove up first. So not everyone likes to glove up. I like to glove up. So it doesn't. Half the time the gloves come off anyways, and you're just a bloody mess, and it's not fun. Pulling calves, it's not at the top of my list of fun things to do. But when you go in there, you first got to figure out what you're dealing with. That if the calf is not coming, why is it not coming? Is it the cow? Is it the calf? Most time it's going to be the calf. Calf's going to be positioned wrong in one way or another, right? It could be backwards. You could have a leg back. You could have a head back. There's all sorts of problems. So the first thing to do is figure out how that calf is positioned inside the cow. Reach in there. Reach in the vagina, get your hand in there, figure out what's going on. If you got 2 feet hanging out, are they front feet, are they back feet? And then where's the head? You always want those 2 front feet coming out together. Hopefully that head and nose is right behind them, above them. That's your ideal position. So reach in there and find the nose or find the mouth, find the teeth. A lot of times the calf will have its mouth open and tongue hanging out or whatever. Reach around until you know that that's a mouth. You got the head and 2 front feet. Once you're there, you're good. If you're not finding a head and a mouth and some teeth and 2 front legs, then why not? Most of the time, if you're not finding that, it's going to be backwards. And we've had to pull out several backwards calves. It happens. But you need to go till you find like the back hock, feel the back of that leg or the tail. Like reach way in. I mean, when you're going in a calf, to get a calf, you're diving into that cow. I've been shoulder deep in a bunch of them. A lot of them are big cows. Not every cow you're going to get that deep in. But sometimes you got to go that deep in until you know for sure what you're dealing with. Like make sure it's the butt. So we've had this problem before of we thought we had the rear end and it was the front end, and you get a calf with that head back. You can get 2 legs and it can feel like the back of a calf. And you're in a hurry, right? Because you're rushing, you're trying to get the calf out, you're trying to save the calf's life. But that's a time to take your time. Like everything else can be a rush, like get the cow in the chute, whatever. But take your time, making sure the calf's positioned right, or at least you know what position that calf's in. And then if it's backwards, and you're for sure it's backwards, you can get your chains on it. You want to make sure your chains go above those dew claws. Get them, if you pull just from the hoof, you're going to rip a calf hoof off or a leg. You're going to hurt the calf. So get those chains up higher on that leg so that you're not injuring the calf as you go to pull it out. And those calves are really strong. You'll be surprised how much pressure you can put on those legs when the chains are in the right spot. But when they're backwards, you need to get them out fast. So it's always a good idea to get someone helping you too. It's not a job that if you can avoid it, don't do it by yourself. Get someone there to help you position legs, chains, hold tails, run the calf puller, whatever you got to do. At least one other person helping you is a great idea. But yeah, backwards, go fast. Frontwards, you can take a little bit more time with. Take it easier on the cow because you don't want to hurt the cow if you can avoid it. When you're putting those chains on, make sure you're only getting the calf in those chains. You don't want to get parts of the cow wrapped inside those chains because you're in a hurry, because that won't do your cow any favors. So make sure you only get on the calf's legs. Just be careful and mindful of what you're doing. Like it's a stressful moment there. Like there's a lot of money riding in that calf in that moment, in the cow, and yeah, if you got the vet coming and you don't know what to do, like wait for the vet to get there. Like it's not a rush deal. If the calf's alive, most time that calf's in that cow, you're going to feel if that calf's alive. If you grab a leg, that calf's most time going to pull that leg right back, and you'll feel that calf pulling back, or you'll feel him moving his head, or things like that. So if your calf's real lively, like, you got time. Like, it's safer in the belly. Wait for some help to come help you get it out.
Yep, absolutely. And and I would agree absolutely that you're better off to err on the side of having the vet help. If you're not sure what you're doing, luckily, the rate of dystocia is really low. Like, it's really not very many we have to help, but the ones we do have to help, we want to make sure, number one, we catch them early, that we're watching close. That's really the primary thing there, is they realize they need help quickly. Don't wait more than an hour to help them. Give them time, let them work. Hopefully they're going to get it. The vast majority of the time they are going to get it. But give them a shot, but then getting on it early, because that gives you time. It gives the vet time to get there. Hopefully he'll bring the equipment with him. He'll bring a calf jack with him, which is a big long rod that's got a winch on it, essentially, with 2 hooks for those chains that you mentioned, putting on the calf's front feet. And so getting a calf out alive, is super rewarding. Getting a calf out not alive is always really frustrating and really discouraging. And once you've got that calf popped out, what are the things that you're focused on doing as soon as that calf, you've got it out, you've got it popped out? What are the things you're focused on at that point in time?
Yeah, number one's getting that calf breathing, right? Like, you got to take that breath. So a lot of times we hustle and try and get something in that nose, tickle that nose a little bit, get that thing itching and wanting to breathe, and get that thing going. So that's number one thing. Getting it cleaned off. Like, you don't have to spend a lot of time cleaning them off. Like, let the mom do that. A lot of times the cows are a little bit confused about what's going on. They're feeling it at the back end, but they're not seeing it. They don't know what's going on. So after that calf's breathing, then we try to get that mama there pretty quick. Get your calf puller there out of the way, get him in a safe place, get that cow to that calf, and leave them alone for a little bit. Keep an eye on them, make sure that she's going to take it and mother it and lick it off. But if that calf is out and breathing and doing okay for a minute, then you're pretty good to just let that cow do her work, and hopefully she'll get that calf going. Hopefully she'll pair up to it fast, and then go from there. See what happens, I guess.
Yeah.
So make sure that calf sucks on her at some point. It shouldn't take her too long to get that calf dried off, and that calf should be standing up and sucking within a couple hours for sure. Like, that calf should be up and going. So you got to pay attention to that cow's udder too. Like, watch those teats. And if that teat's really dry and crusty and dirty, that hasn't been sucked on. So if you got that calf on there, that teat's going to be more clean, kind of shiny looking. That udder may be smaller, not have the pressure on it. Shouldn't be leaking a ton of milk if that calf's been on there sucking good. And a lot of times those calves don't suck a lot right at first, but they'll get on, and you'll be able to see that they get on 1 or 2 teats, and then you're in the golden spot, right? That calf's up, it's going, it's eating and sucking, and most of the time you get a calf to that point, it's going to survive and do really well.
Yeah. So if you're looking at another one of the common questions I get is just what to do if after a baby is born, and in the vast majority of cases that's unassisted, that's without a vet call or without a calf puller or anything else. But what is your standard procedure? Calf is born and is here in the meadow or wherever else we happen to be calving. You've got a newborn baby and he's doing well. What is the procedure? How long do you wait to get a hold of those calves, and what do you do with them?
Sure. The sooner you get a hold of them, the better, because the slower they are. And, within a matter of hours, those calves are going to be up and running around. And the first day to 2 days, they're a little slower. You can still catch them on foot. After, by day 3, it's going to be really hard to catch them. So ideally, we catch them right after they're born, day 1. I like to let them sit till they dry, because then I don't get as messy handling them, and I don't cover my clothes and blood and afterbirth and everything else that goes with that. So if I wait just a little bit, then I usually wait till they suck too, so I don't mess up any of the chance of the mother, getting confused or losing her calf or being stressed with us being there. So if you let them pair up good, the calf's dried off, I go in, I'll grab that calf. We vaccinate it through our vaccination protocol. We usually give it some mineral. We'll give it, we'll tag it, give its air tags, and with us, we'll give it its own individual identification number, and then we'll also give it its mother's number, so we know if this calf gets separated from that cow, you need to know which cow the calf goes to make sure that they stay paired up. So we'll put the mother's tag in. We're doing DNA samples at that point out of the ears and sending those in, so we know right away what that calf is, and we start the registration process on it. We're taking weights and recording the weights on it. We're recording the sex on it, so we know everything there is that we can find out about that calf right away. And every once in a while you get a calf that you thought was going to be a bull and it turns out to be a heifer, and vice versa. So it's always important to make sure you record the sexes on them all. Recording weights so you know what they are. Vaccinations.
What vaccinations and or supplements do you prefer to use?
So we're doing Alpha 7 CD at birth. And then the pace. What's pace?
We
got that. It's a new one we started this year.
All of a sudden, I'm spacing it too. I want to say calf supplement. No, it's calf optimizer.
Calf optimizer. Yeah, it gets it.
Yeah, we need to have like sponsorships from like Speedrite for all their equipment earlier, and like Four Seasons Ag are the guys that sell the calf optimizer, but. That's one of the more common questions I get. Yeah, what do I give them? Because as far as vaccinations and or supplements, and the ones we give are basically just due to the experiences we've had before. Like the Alpha 7 CD is specifically for the CND antitoxin, so that'll get a calf that's a couple weeks old. It's usually the best calf in the pen. One of our first Akaushi calves we had. Great calf, taking off, doing fantastic, looking awesome. And then they're just dead.
Just came dead. I mean, I saw it the night before, and I'm like, this calf is awesome. Like, just kicking butt, going bananas out there on pasture. And then the next morning, he's
drop them
dead in a doornail. I'm like, what the heck happened? Like, we were way confused about that. And so that prevents that. The optimizer seems to keep them from getting scours and stuff as bad, and they've done great with not getting scours since we switched over to that.
Yep. The Nasal Gen 3 PMH would be for the pneumonia.
Yep.
And those would be probably, when we go back through all of our calving records, probably our most common reasons we've lost calves would be one of those three. You've got your CND, you've got your pneumonia, and you've got your scours. And so if you give them the Alpha 7 CD to cover the CD, the Nasal Gen 3 PMH to cover the pneumonia, and then the calf optimizer to cover the scours, that seems to have done a really nice job for us overall. If you do get a calf, in those first couple weeks of life when they're still pretty fragile or the odds are semi-decent, you might lose one. What's your preferred treatment protocol for some of the more common ailments you still do run into on occasion?
If we're treating a calf, a lot of times we were using Draxin. That one's pretty expensive. We went to a drug called Tulaven. That's basically the same thing. It does a great job, a little bit cheaper. So we treat a lot of them with just Tulaven. It's easy. And a lot of the times we're darting our calves. So we're not out there. We can run around and rope them and chase them and catch them and eventually get drugs into them, or we can run them into the barn and into the chute or whatever that way. But the dart gun has really saved us a lot of time and effort and energy, stress on the calves, stress on our people. So you put a little dose in a 2 mil dart and you give them a little shot of Tulaven and they turn around really quick. That's worked really well for us. Like if they get injured, they get limp, sometimes they get stepped on or something, they get a little sore. A lot of times we'll just give them some LA or pour on Banamine in them. Prevail works really good. There's a lot of drugs out there that do a pretty good job. So the main thing is catching the problem and treating it soon. The sooner you catch it, the more likely that calf's going to turn around no matter what your problem is. So a lot of these things, time is the biggest thing. So
and I would completely agree. I mean, if we catch one early and we get Tulaven into it, we'll use that. The new dart would be the name of the gun or the brand we use. New being as in pneumatic with a P. The new dart works really well with the Tulaven, and that gets those turned around. We've had good luck with the bismuth on some of the scours cases.
Scours.
If we put some bismuth into them for scours. And then the LA, that Noramycin 300 LA, has done us a nice job on anything with foot rot or anything like that. And then anything with pain, the pour on Banamine if we get a hold of them, or the Prevail in a dart if we don't. So it's kind of, these are things that you and I end up using them all the time or running into them, or it's almost knee-jerk. You know what to hit them with if they run into stuff. But, those would be some of the really common questions I get, from somebody that's just buying their first set of cows is like, hey, how do I keep them fed? And then it comes time to calve them. How do I get the calf here alive?
Sure.
Now the calf's here alive. What do I do? So
how do you keep the calf alive?
Exactly. Yeah. And what do I do through that whole process? So hopefully, I think there's been something in there that people could take home and make use of. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And make life easier for them. But is there anything that comes to mind that I've not touched on as we've talked through kind of that process of keeping cattle fed and getting calves here alive and going? Anything that you think you'd like to share, or like to add, or mention? I guess
you brought up bismuth, and that can be a hard, like a tricky one to know how much to give a lot of times. And our vet recommended 120 mils. And that seems like a lot. It's more than what the directions say, but we usually give 120 mils. 2 big doses of syringe. Drench them down their throat, get it all in them, give them some LA, that turns around most of our calves right there. You know, and then you're not treating them every couple hours all the time with smaller doses. That bigger dose has really saved us a lot of work, a lot of labor, turned around a lot of calves for us that have suffered with scours. I guess something we haven't touched on yet is you get these pairs and these little calves, and this was one of our hardest lessons we learned, you know, starting out, was moving them. You know, moving pairs is so hard. If you can calve in a place where they don't have to move until they're older, that's going to save you a lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot of lost calves. Because if you're even just trailing them down the road, you get a tiny calf, you're trying to trail down the road, it's not going to keep up, and it's going to lay in a ditch somewhere, or in a tree, or in a neighbor's shed. Those babies are the hardest thing to deal with, you know. And even if you're not trailing, if you're trying to trailer them, trailering calves can be really hard. Like, don't put babies in with big cows. You know, we learned that lesson the hard way. Like, they can get stepped on, they can break a leg. You know, if you're trailering babies, separate them. Like, it's worth the time, it's worth the effort. Don't kill a calf that way. Just handling them in general is a challenge.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess one other really common question that I get, you know, obviously the cattle, all of the mature animals need either grass or hay and water. What do you recommend for supplements? Do you do anything other than just grass and water?
Yeah, we always try to keep mineral in front of them year round. They need mineral. So if they're not mineral, you're not going to get your performance. You're not going to get your gains. Your cows are going to struggle. Your calves are going to struggle. We use Rio Max mineral right now. We've done several different options. This one works good. It's really easy. It comes in a tub. The tubs are easy to move around and throw out in the pasture. Easy to see when they're out. That's the mineral that we're on right now. There's a lot of different mineral options out there. I think there's a lot of stuff that work for a lot of people. There's probably mineral out there that's cheaper than what we use. I would not go with just the salt block. Like, I started out doing that, not good results. You can't just throw out a salt block and think that's going to be good enough for your cows. There's a lot of mineral in there that they need, and they go through it. So it's important to have mineral there with your feed, with your water.
Yep. No, absolutely. And yeah, I mean, hopefully there's been something in there that I guess would be of use for somebody and keep you out of the doghouse. I'm just thinking that's my most recent time I've been in severe trouble with the missus was calving and handling it poorly. And so hopefully if I guess my recommendation there, thinking back through all of our conversation today, would be call a vet early. You know, and or just have other people on tap that you can call, you know, for an extra set of hands and get after it early. Because that was, anyway, my poor wife got to deal with me in an unpleasant scenario because I didn't call for help early enough or didn't get help early enough. And anyway, hopefully I can save somebody else from sleeping on the couch.
Yeah,
that'd be good. You know.
Yeah,
that'd be the hope.
Do not recommend pulling a calf with your wife. that's the lesson of the day. Do not.
Don't do that.
No,
would not.
Just recommend. Let the calf die. Like, just avoid that confrontation.
Would not recommend. But yeah, no, I think pretty well covers it. Anything else? I'm just thinking through as far as you know, feeding, calving, processing calves. Anything else you want to touch on or you'd like to throw in there? Or do you think that's pretty well a wrap for round 2?
I think that's pretty good. I mean, if people have questions or need help, we've done a lot of this now. They're welcome to call Seth at any time. So,
let's go back to the start of the episode. You know, certified real rancher John Larue is on tap to answer all of those questions. I'm as we've defined, I'm clearly the fake rancher of the two of us. So, you know, if you want to ask somebody that knows, you know, you ask Mr. Larue. I'm just the genetics and marketing guy.
Well, we're happy to help whoever, whenever.
Yep.
We've had to learn a lot of our lessons the hard way. You know, you used to always talk about we paid for our education in the lessons we've learned doing this. Like, they don't teach this stuff at college or in school. Like, you can learn it from someone that's already done it, or you can learn it the hard way yourself. And both of us, we've tried to learn whatever we could pick up from other people, and we've changed and tweaked and did stuff that fits us and our system and our personalities and our families. And we've learned a lot of lessons the hard way. And there's always lessons. We're still learning. There's still so much to learn and change and improve. But the best way to do it is do it. And you know, if we can help people, that's what we want to do. Like, we feel good when we help people, and we don't want people to have to suffer the way we suffered through all that. And if we can share our experiences and lessons with people, then that's great. Like, then it's not just us suffering for just ourselves.
Right. And if you've got, you know, any of the different things that John and I have talked through here, as far as some of the different products we use or some of the different approaches we take to get these things to take as good a care of the cattle as we can. I'll have them all written up on the website. You can find us at gotanycows.com. And we'd love to hear from you. If you'd like to reach out to us, our contact info is there as well. Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Got Any Cows podcast. Be sure to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. And visit us anytime at gotanycows.com.